Yeah, 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 I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you lusting is the one you're loving?
Might have been yesterday, who was talking about, personal responsibility. It sounded like personal responsibility. And I even mentioned that he sounded a lot like Kevin Hart, even though I didn't play the Kevin Hart clip. I'll do it tomorrow because it's Thrive Thursday. Kevin Hart was talking about poor people and their responsibility. I feel as though we have these anecdotes, right, that are rooted in our truth, right? Because we all live in a neighborhood where we see certain things. If you live in certain hoods or you've been to certain hoods, like if you got to go to certain hoods to get your hair care products or what have you, get your hair done, your barbershop, you're going to see, liquor store. This is what Kevin Hart was saying. There's a liquor store and a church and there's this and there's that and check cashing place and blah, blah, blah. And those things are there. I will confess in my 20s, I had a financial situation based on a very bad business decision that I made that made me go to the bank and not have any money because my bank account had been seized. So I've been through some things, had to go to a check cashing place where you could also pay your light bill and buy a t-shirt and maybe get some wings. I don't remember. I think you could get wings there. Like everything, it was, bulletproof glass. It was very demeaning if I can look back. And I didn't feel good standing in that line, cashing a check and giving a large percentage of my check to somebody just for the privilege of cashing a check. I was unbanked for a minute. So I understand what that feels like, what it looks like, the rent centers and all that. And it's real easy to talk about how that, perpetuates the cycle of poverty, because it does. It does. And I didn't come from a place of poverty. I could have easily gone to my parents and asked them to bail me out, but I'm too prideful to do that. So, I sucked it up and fortunately though, I had a job, right? So I had a job. I was making decent money. So I was able to dig out of a hole, and I've dug out a couple of holes in my career, but that doesn't mean that somehow, everyone can do it, because everyone doesn't have the same vision for themselves, the same experience, the same makeup, the same, and it's weird to me that those of you who have pushed through find it so easy to wag your finger at those who haven't. And at the same time, you don't want to let people off the hook for their own personal responsibility, because every individual has a life to live and it is their responsibility to live it. So it's tough, and I want to have this conversation. So I'm going to put the call out, 866-801-8255, because flooding my timeline were these images, these videos of something that went down last night in Philadelphia, in the heart of Philadelphia, where the cracked Liberty Bell is, in the center of, the bastion of America. This is the birthplace of America, Philadelphia, the epicenter of all that is Americana. There were these I guess I can call them flash mobs of looting. Lululemon, Foot Locker, and the Apple Store in Philadelphia's historical center city. If you live in this area, I know Clay Kane's from part of Philly, 866-801-8255. And as I was watching these Black children videotape, because they were Black children, masked up, some of them not masked up at all. They were out there with their faces. So I'm sure they're going to be arrested. 15 to 20 people were arrested as of midnight last night. I'm sure more were, because they were videotaping them crashing into these stores. And the one video, you see the Apple Store people trying to hold the door, try to keep the door closed. And these kids, like hundreds of them, just a horde, like a zombie horde. They went in, they grabbed up all of the things. And now there's clearly someone called it organized crime. It was the opposite of organized. It was the absolute opposite of it. Was disorganized. It was mayhem, chaos. And it was so stupid, because they grabbed up the iPads and the iPhones and the this and the that. And all of those phones have trackers on them. So immediately somebody's like, oh, they're tracking us. Oh, break the phones, stop on the phones. So they literally crashed through this store, took everything, and then slammed him to the ground. So nobody got away with an iPhone that was used. I mean, it was just senseless, right? But I was like, why am I seeing this? Why am I seeing this? And I'm not saying, it's not something to see, because if you are in the heart of Philly, this Apple store is beautiful. And anyone that knows, development, and how a neighborhood is developed, there's going to be a Starbucks, there's going to be an Apple store, there's going to be a Whole Foods. That is the kind of like a Foot Locker. When we talk about 125th Street in Harlem, it was the Magic Johnson Theater, it was the Foot Locker, it was the Starbucks, and then you knew, okay, the neighborhood has arrived, right? These are markers of success, right? Of a neighborhood that's thriving. You got an Apple store in your neighborhood, that's a good neighborhood, until it's not, right? And someone was like, well, why were the police were overrun? There was I'm talking hundreds of young people. It was wild, right? So what's the solution? 866-801-8255. So there's a part of me, because of the way I was raised and the way I was socialized and conditioned, that says, no, this is unacceptable. Well, actually, that's a big part of me. This is unacceptable, period, full stop. Unacceptable. These kids, where their parents, how in the hell are you out here in the middle of the night ripping them? Right? And they were young. You could tell they were young. It wasn't like, maybe they were 17, 16. It was like young kids. They recovered 2 guns from the scene. So this could have been really tragic. The police could have been tragic. It's Philly. It could have happened. And I just think about, across the board, though. This is not just happening in Philly. It's California. It's everywhere. Everywhere is a big city with money. But it also speaks to something going on in a society. And I remember vaguely the 80s, 1980s in New York City, because I'm from Jersey. We would, from time to time, sneak over, get a bus, go to the city. The city was filthy. I remember being filthy. I remember 42nd Street being I remember it might have been 817, walking down, 42nd Street, and all of the triple X, the sex movies and the stripper. I mean, it was the prostitution. It was horrible. Litter everywhere. It was a filthy city. Graffiti. I remember the graffiti on the trains and the graffiti of just trash and rats and graffiti. And this is, again, one of the wealthiest cities in the country, but there was a climate of acceptability, or at least there's nothing we could do. Hands were thrown up. I feel like there's a couple of things going on, as I mentioned many times on these airwaves, that we're at an inflection point. And I think the inflection is more than political, more than racial. There is a lack of, I want to say morality, but that then becomes a word that I can't quite define in this this world that we live in. I don't even really know what morality looks like. But there's like a sense of right and wrong that doesn't exist. Perhaps like we've abandoned this notion, and I'm talking about the collective we, society at large, because there've been so many breaches. So what's the value in doing right when you have, Bob Menendez, a sitting senator, clearly doing something allegedly. And I say clearly allegedly doing something nefarious with a foreign government. You had a whole sitting president who allowed his son and son-in-law and daughter to make some deal that got them $2 billion. We still don't know. We don't know what that deal was, but we know Jared Kushner got $2 billion from the Saudis. We don't know why. While the president of the United States was sitting in office, we know that he took classified documents. We know that he was doing something with the Russians. I'm not sure what. I don't know what exchanges happened with China. I don't know. He's been indicted several times, but this man was president of the United States with the nuclear codes, right? So you say, okay, well, he seems to be getting away with things. So who am I to follow the rules? The rules are for certain people, but I feel like we all know, even little kids know right from wrong. Stealing is always going to be wrong, I think. And there should be like a zero tolerance, but I don't really quite know what to do about it. So I want to have a conversation. At the exact same time, we must ask ourselves, why are we seeing this? Crime happens everywhere. We don't ever talk about Anchorage, Alaska, one of the most dangerous cities in the United States of America. We never talk about Anchorage, Alaska. When we talk about Anchorage, Alaska, but I always hear about Chicago. Never hear about Anchorage, Alaska. unless we bring it up here on Urban View. So we should bring it up more frequently, and we should dig deeper into what is the crime there. Is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States of America, Anchorage, Alaska. Let's keep talking about it, because clearly those people there get to go about their lives every day and not be demonized. Which then leads me to why we're seeing all of the crashes and burns, slams and burns, and all of the what do they call them? What do they call these looting episodes? I'm gonna call them looting episodes. 866-801-8255. So Center City in Philly is the central business district defined by, of course, the original boundaries before 1854. This is the city, the heart of the city, where the Liberty Bell, the Declaration of Independence, was signed here. Independence Hall is there, on fire last night. On fire. And all the cameras could pick up these little black kids just in the streets looking dumb as hell. And I also asked this question, those of you who were identified as black, do you bear responsibility? Do you feel embarrassed when you see this? 866-801-8255. So I'm gonna play a clip. Keith Boykins, who has of course been on Urban View, I hear him from time to time, different, you've seen him on MSNBC. He's been, he's out there. He has his own, space that he comments on. Keith Boykin, journalist. So he had a little thing, I think it was on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or something, and I want to play it because I was immediately going, damn these kids, where are their parents? Where they pull up their damn pants out here in the streets with phones now that they can't even use. You created all this havoc, wreaked all this havoc, created all of this damage for what? Now ruined the neighborhood. There goes the neighborhood, damn it. And then Keith said the thing, and I was like, okay, let me play this, and then we're going to talk about it. 866-801-8255. Smizz, play it.
For the retailers, the term shrink not only refers to shoplifting, but also includes inventory that is damaged, lost, or stolen by employees. The National Retail Federation admits that external retail crime only accounts for 37% of shrink losses. That means that 2/3 of the losses have nothing to do with those dramatic smash and grab scenes. In fact, the CFO of Walgreens admitted this year that the hype about retail theft was overblown. For the police here in Southern California, overall crime rates in LA are down from last year. A recent surge in smash and grab robberies makes up little of the overall problem of retail thefts, according to the LA Times. But there's two additional factors that contribute to the way this story is told: politics and race. The smash and grab stories help promote an image of rampant crime in places that Republicans like to call Democrat cities. And videos of Black people committing crimes allow conservatives to pathologize Blackness and link it to criminality. But most Black people don't commit crimes and actually have lower odds of shoplifting than whites, according to government research. Now, don't get me wrong. Plenty of Black people do commit crimes, just like plenty of white people do. But when Black people do it, we bear a burden of representation that unfairly associates individual actors with an entire race of people. That's why we get profiled in stories. When white people commit crime, they're usually not held out as examples to demonize an entire race. That's why the most famous thieves in American history are celebrated as heroes in some circles. Jesse James, Bonnie and Clyde, John Dillinger, Willie Sutton, Pretty Boy Floyd, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, D.B. Cooper, and Patty Hearst. They're all white. And that's not including the thieves who stole this land from the indigenous people. So when we talk about retail theft, let's be mindful of how these videos can be used by some as an excuse to lock up more Black people in jail.
Okay, hit on something. We got to be real careful, because there's a pathology. He said pathologize Blackness. This is what it does, right? So now, like, my initial thing is like, why they gotta be Black? Because I feel a kinship to these children. I'm like, now everyone's gonna look at all of us, because they do. So it's not my imagination. When we see that, they say, oh, see, Black people, it's all of us, right? Even though the reality is, which is why I have to vehemently push back when I have folk come on talking about poverty and crime in my face. I have to remind people, most Black people have never been in the criminal justice system, and the vast majority of us are not poor. The numbers don't bear out. 26, 27%, that's a lot, disproportionately maybe, but 70+% of us, why don't we talk about the 70+% of us that are not impoverished? And then let's talk about policies and plans to help bring the 20-something% up. But that can't be your first thing coming in talking about criminal justice reform and poverty. Thank you, Keith Boykin, for that. And by the way, Keith Boykin, let me just give you his bona fides, because you should know him. Dartmouth. He's a Harvard Law alum. He wrote a book called Why Does Everything Have to Be About Race? I appreciate that. He's got a bunch of other books as well. But that's his latest. Keith Boykin, 37% of losses, this corporate losses, only 37%. And I say only because that's a lot, are in the theft area. Smash and grabs, shoplifting. Black people are not the largest shoplifters, just like we're not the largest people on welfare either. But this to me feels like, and as we come into 2024, I want us to be real mindful of what is being pushed and propagated among the media. This can become a rallying cry, much the way the welfare queen was a rallying cry, much the way Willie Horton was a rallying cry, the Southern strategy. These are ways in which you demonize people to say we need more police, and I'm tough on crime. I'm tough on crime. You're going to hear a lot about that. And then the images of crime has a black face. Anchorage, Alaska is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States of America and is predominantly white, but no one ever talks about it. They talk about Chicago, which is not even in the top 10. Chicago's not in the top 10. So why do they keep talking about Chicago? 866-801-8255. It's all political, and yes, at the same time, I want peace in my neighborhood. I don't want there to be any crime. I want these children to be home somewhere reading a book. I don't want to wag my finger, but yeah, somebody needs to gather these children up. And at the same time, I was also saying that there's a lack of parenting and leadership in our community. Because there was a time, my mother talks about it, and I don't want to sound like, when I was young, milk cost 10 cents. Gas was 5 cents. I don't want to be that person. However, there was a cultural responsibility that we had to one another. My mother often talked about coming home from school in Augusta, Georgia, acting out. The neighbor could give her a beating, a spanking before her mama got home. And then she got another spanking because how dare you embarrass me in the neighborhood? That ain't going to happen. But we all had responsibility to each other's children. Where is so-and-so? What are you doing? Yes, Miss So-and-so. Like, I don't even let customer service people call me Karen. I don't know you. You're going to call me Miss Hunter. I don't care if I'm 20 or 18. If I'm on here and you are serving me, you're going to call me Miss Hunter. You're going to give me my respect. And I feel like even that, there are no boundaries. These kids are just out there just, woo. These particular kids, not your kids. These particular kids. But those are our kids too. So I do feel a kinship. I do feel a responsibility.
I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one